Before the age of 3, you had already lived for more than 1,000 days. You saw your parents for the first time, recognized a familiar voice, tasted food, and learned to crawl, walk, and speak. You may even have fallen off a chair, your first experiment with gravity, conducted without research funding. But today, your personal archive gives the same answer every time: file not found. The usual explanation sounds simple. Your brain was too young, so it could not store anything. The problem is that babies recognize people, learn new rules, and remember the results of their own actions. So those memories may have been created. Where did they go? And why can your adult brain no longer access them? In the 1980s, American psychologist Carolyn Rovee-Collier designed an experiment that looked almost like a game for babies. A mobile was suspended above a crib, and one of the infant's legs was connected to it with a soft ribbon.
The baby would kick by accident, and the mobile would spin. Another kick, another turn. It was the scientific version of a remote control, just without batteries. Very quickly, the movements stopped being random. The infants began kicking more often because they had learned a rule. My action changes the world. The ribbon was then removed, and the baby was brought back beneath the same mobile several days later. The toy was not connected yet, but the child's legs were already moving. The baby expected the familiar result. Memory also became noticeably stronger with age. 2-month-old infants retained the association for several days. By 6 months, some remembered it for weeks.
A brief reminder, such as seeing the familiar mobile move, could even restore the response after a delay. So an infant's brain can learn, store information, and retrieve it later. But recognizing a toy is not the same as mentally returning, 20 years later, to one particular morning in your crib. The memory existed. It had not yet become part of a personal story. The first part of the answer has to do with the structure of the brain. Deep inside it is the hippocampus, a small curved structure whose name means seahorse. Not the most intimidating mascot, but one of the key parts of the memory system. A memory, however, is not stored inside the hippocampus as a finished video file. Your brain does not save childhood as baby_final_version_7.mp4. When you remember a birthday, your brain has to reconnect many separate details: a person's face, the sound of a voice, the layout of the room, the smell of food, your emotions, and the order in which everything happened. These elements are processed across different parts of the brain. The hippocampus helps link them together and later reconstruct the episode you are trying to remember. It works less like a hard drive and more like a library catalog. The books are stored in different places, but the catalog tells you where to look. An infant's hippocampus is already active, but its internal regions and its connections with the cortex are still developing. Some important parts of this system continue maturing until roughly the ages of 2 to 4. That is why a child may recognize a toy or repeat a learned action. A complete episodic memory demands more. The brain must link a place, a time, people, emotions, and the child's own role. Then reconstruct them later as one coherent scene. Still, an immature system explains only part of the mystery. Because the same process that develops the hippocampus may also alter the old paths leading to memory. But the immaturity of the hippocampus does not explain everything. In 2014, neuroscientists Paul Franklin, Sheena Jocelyn, and their colleagues tested an almost paradoxical idea. What if the process that builds the young brain also makes its earliest memories harder to access? The hippocampus continues producing new neurons. This process is called neurogenesis.
A new cell does not simply take an empty seat. It joins a network that is already operating and changes some of the existing connections. For a developing brain, this is useful.
The system becomes more flexible and more powerful. But an old route to stored information may be rebuilt in the process. The researchers increased neurogenesis in adult mice. Afterward, the animals had more difficulty recalling things they had previously learned. The scientists then reversed the experiment. They reduced the production of new neurons in young mice, and some early memories lasted longer. This does not mean the brain literally presses a button marked "Delete Childhood." And an experiment in mice does not prove that the same mechanism works identically in humans, but it reveals a possible process. Imagine a city where new roads are built every day. The city expands, traffic moves faster, and the navigation system is delighted. But the route you used yesterday may no longer exist. An early memory may not be completely destroyed. The path leading back to it may simply have changed. So perhaps the infant brain forgets not because it is working badly, but because it is growing too quickly. But even a perfectly preserved scene still needs a main character. Autobiographical memory is more than a face, a room, and a feeling of fear. It includes the understanding that this event happened to me. I was there yesterday. I exist today. And both versions belong to the same person. Psychologists Mark Howe and Mary Courage linked early autobiographical memory to the development of the cognitive self, a stable understanding that the child is a separate participant in events. One way to observe this development is the mirror test. A small mark is secretly placed on a child's nose, and the child is positioned in front of a mirror. A very young infant may smile at the reflection, touch the glass, or search behind the mirror for the other baby. A free friend has been discovered, until the child realizes it is them. Between roughly 18 and 24 months, many children begin responding differently. When they see the mark, they touch their own nose. The child now understands that the face in the mirror is connected to their body. But touching the mark does not instantly unlock a permanent memory archive. The mirror is not a "save forever" button. It is only one sign that the child is developing a more complex understanding of the self. Once a stable sense of me begins to form, separate events can be organized into a personal timeline. I was in that room. This happened to me. I changed afterward. The main character has arrived. Now the story needs words. A child already has experiences before they can speak in complete sentences. Warm water, a familiar face, a loud noise, pain, fear, joy. But these pieces are not necessarily organized into a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Language helps bring order to them. We were in the park. It started raining. I fell. Dad picked me up. 4 short sentences turn a collection of sensations into a sequence. They explain where the event happened, what came first, and how it ended. The memory now has a plot, fortunately, without requiring end credits. Conversations with adults are especially important. When parents ask, "Who was there? What happened next?" or "Were you scared?" a child learns more than how to answer a question. They learn how to reconstruct the past from separate pieces. Psychologist Chi Wang studied how family conversations and cultural ideas about the individual are related to the form of autobiographical memory. Some families talk more about emotions and personal details. Others emphasize group actions and the broader context. This does not determine whether memory exists. It influences how a person later tells the story of their life. Language does not create experience from nothing. It organizes experience and makes it possible to retell. But every retelling can do more than strengthen a memory. It can quietly change it. At this point, you may want to object, but I definitely remember being a baby. You are lying in a crib. A toy hangs above you. The wall is green. your mother leans over the side. The image feels so clear that questioning it seems almost impolite. But where did those details come from? Perhaps a real fragment survived. Or perhaps you later saw a photograph of the room, heard your parents tell the story, or watched an old home video. Your brain combined the sources and produced one complete scene labeled My Memory. This kind of confusion is called a source monitoring error. A person remembers the information but incorrectly identifies where it came from. In one large study, researchers surveyed 6,641 people. Almost 40% dated their earliest memory to the age of 2 or younger, and 893 participants claimed to remember events from their first year of life. The researchers suggested that many of these scenes may have been assembled from real sensations, photographs, family stories, and later imagination. Experiments using altered photographs have demonstrated an even stranger effect. After repeated interviews, some people began describing an event that had never happened. Memory supplied the weather, clothing, and physical sensations, a full reconstruction service nobody ordered. There is also a simpler mistake. The event may have been real, but happened later than the person believes. The memory survives while its age label shifts backward. So an early scene may be genuine, incorrectly dated, expanded with later details, or entirely constructed after the fact. But why then are so many earliest memories connected to fear, hospitals, or falling? One objection remains. What if an event was so frightening that it could not possibly be forgotten? Strong emotions really do change the way memories are formed. Fear captures attention, activates the stress response, and helps the brain learn a rule quickly. Do not go near this. Be careful when you hear that sound. But even intense fear does not turn memory into a perfect recording. Often, the opposite happens. Certain details become vivid, while the place, timing, and sequence of events become unclear. This is where we need to separate different kinds of memory. Episodic memory allows you to reconstruct a story, where you were, who was nearby, and what happened. Emotional learning preserves a reaction. A smell, sound, animal, or room may trigger anxiety before you understand why. Implicit memory can influence behavior without producing a conscious story about the past. So a person may not remember an early encounter with a dog, yet still become tense around dogs or avoid them later in life. This does not prove that a complete recording is hidden somewhere inside the brain, waiting to be unlocked correctly. The story may have become inaccessible while the reaction survived. And this applies to more than fear. A child may forget a specific hug, voice, or moment of comfort. But repeated experiences can still shape what they expect from other people and from the world. For parents, this subject may sound especially sad. A child will not remember hundreds of moments that matter deeply to you. Nighttime feedings, walks, bedtime songs, and that one week when getting them to sleep seemed to consume roughly half of human existence. But the absence of a memory does not mean the absence of an effect. The brain does not need to preserve a precise scene from every experience. It can extract patterns from events that happen repeatedly. When an adult responds to a crying child again and again, the child gradually learns what to expect from the people around them. When someone helps them calm down, they experience the transition from stress back to safety. When adults speak to them, thousands of individual sounds slowly become an understanding of language. You do not remember every word you heard, but you can speak. You do not remember every attempt to stand, but you can walk. In the same way, early care, fear, security, and communication can leave lasting results, even when the individual scenes disappear. This does not mean the first years permanently determine a person's entire future. The brain continues to change, and later experiences can strengthen, revise, or repair earlier expectations. The beginning of your life was not an empty space. You forgot most of the events, but you kept some of what they taught you. And that leaves one final question. If your brain, your memory, and your sense of self have all changed, is the baby in the old photograph still you? So why can't you remember the first years of your life? There was no single button that erased everything at once. The infant brain could already learn and retain information, but the episodic memory system was still under construction. The hippocampus was learning to connect places, times, people, and the child's own role into stable episodes. New neurons were reshaping old pathways. A sense of self was gradually emerging. Language began turning sensations into stories. Later, photographs and family accounts could add new details to those stories. So the beginning of your life is neither an empty void nor a lost video archive. You cannot open it and replay it like a film. But during those years, you learn to recognize people, understand sounds, move, trust, and return to a state of calm. The baby in the old photograph is you. You forgot the events, but not everything they changed inside you. What is your earliest memory? And how do you know you remember the event itself rather than a story someone told you about it?